Oh, hello, and welcome back to another video lecture on the Reconstruction age. Today's topic is going to be the four main interest groups of Reconstruction and how they respond to those four main issues that we learned about in the last video. Our first main interest group are the freedmen. All right, the freedmen are primarily interested in ensuring that their own guaranteed rights are met and secured. This means the right to education, the right to vote, and the right to own land. Primarily, what we're talking about here is having economic opportunity guaranteed after the Civil War. All right, and as in addition to that, political power guaranteed after the Civil War. So we have two main issues here when we're talking about equality: economic and political equality. This is going to be the primary concern of the freedmen and the radical Republican Party. They also are more inclined to favor harsh punishments on the South, especially when we're talking about taking away property and land ownership, which is what the whole 40 acres and a mule thing would be, right? Start them off with a piece of land so that they can use their skills that they have as farmers and give them money so they can get started in their homestead. The whole idea is they have to be independent from their local government and their former slave owners so that they can truly be free. If they're denied political power, white settlers can still control them with laws. And if they're denied economic security, white settlers will control them via economics, right? So this is one of the main issues of Reconstruction just in general. How far are we going to go to ensure these rights of freedmen? And it's also an interest group here, right? The freedmen advocating for themselves. Next are the former Southern elites. The old Southern elite, right? What we're talking about are those rulers of the former antebellum, aka pre-Civil War Southern society. What we know about people with wealth and status is that they always want to keep their wealth and status. And that is the primary motive of the old Southern elite here. Maintain their wealth and their status, right? They have a way of life that puts them at the top, and they want to keep that. So any threats to their wealth and status, they're going to use every tool at their disposal to fight, all right? They also ruled this society that was pillared on white supremacy, and that's what they want to keep. They want to keep two classes of people, white people and black people. That is called white supremacy. They want to create a rule where black people are still under the subjugation of white people. This is by denying equality in terms of economics and politics, like we just talked about with the freedmen, okay? Lastly, they want to be treated as full citizens immediately. Oh boy, spelling is bad. That's not even close. Anyway, they want to be treated as full citizens immediately. Okay, they didn't want to have to go through any hoops or jumps. They just want to be, we're back in the Union right away. So when we look at the four main issues of Reconstruction, where they're saying, who do we punish? Nobody, right? On what terms will we rejoin the Union? Just automatically. We don't need to do anything with the Southern economy, and don't worry about the freedmen, because again, their whole point is retaining their wealth and their status. Quick aside, for those of you video game nerds like me, if you played Red Dead Redemption 2, fantastic video game. If you played that game, you actually come across a old Southern elite family in the story of the game, and you can kind of see how this like is portrayed in the modern day, media, but how this little power struggle plays out in that. That's just for like the two of you who maybe played that game. Moving on. Next interest group are the moderate Republicans. Now, it's important to understand that the Democrats, there's two political parties at the time, the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Democrats had primarily been centered in the South, and they were the party of the South, and that made them, in 1860, the pro-slavery party. Now that the Southern states are not technically voting in the Union, they have no power in the Democrats. So basically, it's just Republican rule. Like, they're the only political party. And they are split into two camps. And the first camp is the moderate Republicans, okay? Now, one of their main goals is to keep the Republican Party in power. That's also the goal of the other group of Republicans, which we're going to talk about, okay? It's natural for political parties to want to stay in power, but this is just kind of an important aside. How they want to keep them in power is really the what's different, right? And what they basically want to do is to shore up power through less harsh punishments, reaching across to the Democrats saying, hey, listen, Southerners, vote for us because we don't want to punish you that much, right? So they favor less harsh punishments in the South. They want a speedy return of Southern states to the Union. The sooner that we can get this behind us, the sooner the nation can heal and move on and start rebuilding its economy in the industrial mindset, right? These are the moderate Republicans, and their primary goal is to avoid future conflict. Okay, they're trying to reach across to Southerners to get them back in the Union and kind of end the conflict as soon as possible, right? All right, that means they're going to have to make concessions with these old Southern elite. And if you look at this, what the old Southern elite want and what the freedmen want are pretty much opposites. So how do you make concessions there while still guaranteeing the rights of the freedmen? That's going to be pretty tough, right? That brings us to the next group, which are the radical Republicans. The radical Republicans, though still part of the Republican Party, like the moderates, also share the same goals as the moderates. They want to retain Republican power, right? They want to establish the Republican power as the power of the South, right? So they want to establish, boy, spelling is bad, Republican rule in the South. Now, they're going to do this primarily by weakening the Democratic Party and keeping those old Southern elites weak so they can't act. And in doing that, then they're going to give the equal rights to the freedmen so that the freedmen can vote. And who are the freedmen going to vote for? Certainly not the Democrats, right? They're going to vote for the radical Republicans. And then the Republican Party will have the power in the South. And this is how you end conflict. You snuff out any thoughts of rebellion, right? Okay, so the radical Republicans then, in order to do this, they favored harsh punishments on the South, right? Harsh punishments, they want to delay the return of Southern states to the Union. Not only this, they're also going to ensure, right, that they have equal rights for the freedmen, especially the right to vote. Again, this is partly because they want to retain their power. If you give freedmen political power, freedmen are going to like, hey, look at the people who just freed them, right? They're going to vote for those people. Now, this is not to say that the radical Republicans' whole goal is only centered on political power. There were honest Republicans who legitimately sought to give the rights to the freedmen that they deserve, right? This whole principles in America of equality and justice and liberty ought to apply to all citizens, and that includes the freedmen, okay? All right, so not all Republicans are just out there for their own power, okay? And moderates too, they are trying to improve the United States and put it on a path forward, all right? It's just, what does that look like? It's gonna be different. Now, it's important to understand immediately there were calls to make Black people citizens, federal citizens, because if you remember Dred Scott, they were denied that citizenship. So there are immediate calls for full citizenship, full voting rights, 40 acres and a mule. And the resistance that Southerners felt towards those things is going to cause a lot of the conflict that we see over the next decade of the Reconstruction age. There you have it, the four main interest groups of the Reconstruction age, what they wanted and how they approach these problems. Your assignment today will be to read from Abraham Lincoln and a guy named Thaddeus Stevens and figure out Are they moderates or are they radicals? Thanks for coming.